Stand on the warm white sand of Copacabana Beach, listen to the vendors shouting amidst the crowd, listen to the sound of the Atlantic waves crashing. Now, look up, beyond the luxury hotels, beyond the crowded streets, until you reach those verdant peaks. There he is, a guardian carved from stone, arms outstretched, floating silently above the clouds. Now, erase it from your memory. Imagine opening the heavy wooden doors of a streetcar in 1922. You look at that same mountain, Mount Corcovado. But there is no welcoming embrace, no white cross in the sky, just an irregular needle of dark rock piercing the sky, 7-10 meters high above the ocean. It's a steep, unforgiving precipice. The wind howls around the peak, tearing away the vegetation. Lightning strikes the summit constantly, leaving black burn marks on the bare granite. It's a place for eagles, not for humans. How do you build a 30-meter-high monument on a ledge that barely has room for a picnic? You don't have helicopters. You don't have modern cranes. You don't even have a paved road to the top. All you have is a steep, precarious old railway line built in the late 1900s. A small army of workers with basic hand tools and an idea bordering on complete insanity. They want to build a colossus. They want to mold it in reinforced concrete, and they want to assemble it right on the edge of an abyss. This is not just the story of a religious statue. It's a story about defying gravity, battling extreme weather conditions, navigating a political war, and surviving a logistical nightmare that lasted 9 brutal years. Rio de Janeiro in the early 1920s was a city violently attempting to reinvent itself. It was the capital of Brazil. The government isn't just building, it's fundamentally altering the geography of the earth. It's demolishing the dark colonial alleyways of the city center. It's literally razing entire hills. They are building wide, sunny boulevards lined with imported European trees. The famous Copacabana Palace Hotel is about to open its doors, bringing Italian marble and crystal chandeliers to host the world's elite. It's an era of jazz music and explosive wealth generated by the coffee barons of the interior. The elite drive imported French cars. Everyone is looking strictly to the future. But here's the thing. Beneath all that glamour, the city is a powder keg. It is chaotic, expensive, and profoundly complex. The poor, displaced by the grandiose European-style reforms in the city center, are being pushed onto the steep slopes, forming the first favelas. The military is restless. In July 1922, a group of young army officers rebels. They march down Copacabana Beach, rifles in hand, confronting the government in a final suicidal stand. Blood is spilled on the pristine white sand. And right in the middle of all this political and social chaos, there is another powerful force watching from the shadows, feeling completely left behind. The Catholic Church. For centuries, the Church was not just a part of Brazil. It was Brazil. It owned the land, registered births, and administered deaths. But the Republic, proclaimed in 1889, changed the rules overnight. It legally separated church and state. It secularized cemeteries and public schools. The Church observes this chaotic, fast-paced republic and feels it is losing control over the soul of the nation. Protestantism is growing slowly. Secularism is the new religion of politicians. The Church wants a symbol, something imposing, something permanent, something that reclaims the city. The year 1922 marks the centenary of Brazil's independence. It's the perfect excuse. The Catholic Circle of Rio organizes an aggressive campaign. They call it Monuments Week. They know they can't ask the secular government for a single cent. The politicians would block the request immediately and the press would tear them apart. So, they go straight to the streets. A petition circulates through all the parishes, neighborhoods, and open-air markets. Millions of signatures are collected. The money is raised exclusively through public donations, cents from ordinary dock workers, generous checks from wealthy widows. Children donate their allowances. Women, according to reports, donate their wedding rings to be melted down. The campaign ends up raising more than 2 million milreis, an absolute fortune at the time. Everyone contributes. They need a place, a pedestal that simply cannot be ignored. They are debating 3 locations. Sugarloaf Mountain is proposed, but it's too flat, too difficult to build on. Santo Antonio Hill in the city center is also proposed, but it's too low. Then they look at the tallest and sharpest needle of all, Corcovado. The idea isn't exactly new. In the mid-1800s, a French priest named Pierre-Marie Bosse looked at that same mountain and had a vision. He went to Princess Isabel, daughter of Emperor Dom Pedro II, and asked for funds to build a gigantic Christian monument. The princess was polite, but refused. It was too expensive, too difficult, and a few decades later, the empire fell anyway. The priest's dream remained buried in the dusty National Archives. But wanting a giant statue and actually building one are two very different things. The organizers are promoting a major national design competition. The rules are simple. Design a monument to Christ that will forever define the urban landscape of Rio de Janeiro. An engineer and architect named Heitor da Silva Costa wins the commission. He is a brilliant and extremely devout man. His goal is to create an absolute masterpiece. But there's a problem. His first drawing is, well, it's terrible. He creates a classic and extremely traditional figure of Christ. In one hand, the figure holds a giant wooden cross. In the other hand, his fingers rest on a globe representing the world. Heitor is proud of it. He publishes his drawings confidently in local newspapers. But the people of Rio, they are ruthless. Rio is a city with a sharp and relentless sense of humor. Not much is tolerated there. The locals glance at the cartoons in the morning newspaper and immediately start laughing. They point out that, from a distance, the globe looks like a toy. They've given the drawing a brutal and catchy nickname, Christ with a balloon. Hector is deeply humiliated. But he realizes the public is entirely right. He has a huge problem with scale and atmospheric perspective. A statue on such a high mountain cannot rely on small props. A globe and a cross held in his hands will appear as mere strange, undefined shapes seen from the streets below. The silhouette needs to be razor sharp. It needs to be unmistakable. Even in the dense morning fog, even 10 kilometers away on the other side of the bay, even in the dead of night. So he teams up with an artist named Carlos Oswald. Oswald is a master of visual impact. Together they have an epiphany. The statue doesn't need to hold a cross awkwardly. The statue should be a cross. It's a stroke of pure genius. The figure itself, with arms outstretched in an eternal embrace, constitutes the universal symbol of faith. It's clean, it's bold, it solves the silhouette problem instantly. But drawing a giant cross on paper is one thing. Building it on a rock in the sky introduces a whole new universe of problems. The sheer scale of the project is daunting for the local engineers. The arms will be 28 meters wide, from fingertip to fingertip. The head alone will weigh 30 tons, roughly the weight of 6 adult elephants. And they plan to place this statue, which looks more like a ship's sail, on top of a mountain where the wind routinely blows at over 100 kilometers per hour. The realities of physics hit Heitor da Silva Costa hard. He needs materials. Bronze is the classic choice for statues, but bronze is too heavy. Transporting the necessary quantity to the top of that mountain to build a 30-meter colossus is logistically impossible. Steel is strong, but in a few years, under the sea air and humidity of Rio de Janeiro, the steel would rust and turn into a pale reddish color. There's only one material that can work: reinforced concrete. It's a relatively new technology, from the beginning of the 20th century. People use it to build structural bridges. They use it to construct industrial buildings, functional but often unattractive. Nobody uses it for fine art. Nobody uses it to sculpt soft garments or human faces. Heitor has no choice. He travels to Europe. He needs the best minds in the world to make the impossible possible. In Paris, he finds a network of masters. The first is a sculptor named Paul Landowski. Landowski is a Franco-Polish master of the Art Deco style. He favors clean lines, bold geometric forms, and imposing figures. Hector hires him to sculpt the defining features, the head and hands. But Landowski is a quiet artist, not an adventurer. He refuses to go to Brazil. One glance at the precipice of Corcovado on a map is enough to make him shake his head negatively. He will create the pieces in his cozy studio in Boulogne-Billancourt, molding them in clay and plaster, and will send the fragile molds across the Atlantic. It's up to the Brazilians to figure out how to install them. To sculpt the face itself, Landowski hired a Romanian artist named Gheorghe Leonida. Leonida was obsessed with portraits. He gave the face a distinct, austere, yet utterly serene appearance. The last man Hector meets in Paris is the French engineer Albert Cocotte, one of the greatest experts in reinforced concrete of his time. He builds gigantic bridges and wind tunnels for the aeronautical industry. He is a master of structural tension. They analyze artistic projects, they analyze meteorological data from Mount Corcovado. Next, they perform the complex mathematical calculations. To withstand the overwhelming force of the Atlantic gales, the statue cannot be merely a hollow, empty shell. It needs a massive internal structure. It needs a central square pillar of solid concrete, anchored deep into the hard granite of the mountain. Inside this pillar, there will be 12 separate horizontal concrete floors, branching out towards the chest and arms, connected by a narrow zigzag staircase. Inside the statue, the sensation will be exactly that of walking through a small, dark, 12-story skyscraper. The project is finished, the calculations are complete, the basic structure is defined. But a shadow hangs over the project. Concrete is cheap, it's incredibly strong. But let's be honest, raw concrete is brutally ugly. If they simply pour raw concrete on it, the statue will look like a drab, grey military bunker looming over the beautiful city. It will stain immediately. It will crack under the scorching tropical sun. The heavy summer rains will leave it stained, black, and deplorable. They are about to build the most visible monument in the southern hemisphere, and it's going to be awful. Hector wanders the streets of Paris, distressed by the appearance of the place. Heitor returns to Brazil with an answer drawn directly from his country's own deep history. Steatite, steatite, or soapstone, a magical metamorphic rock found deep within the vast mines of Minas Gerais. Heitor remembers the statues of biblical prophets sculpted at the end of the 18th century by the legendary Brazilian artist Alejandrinho. For over 100 years, these statues stood exposed to the elements, battered by rain and sun, and yet they remained almost perfect. Soapstone is amazing. It's soft enough to be scratched with a fingernail, yet highly weather-resistant. It doesn't expand excessively in the heat, it doesn't shrink in the cold, it repels water naturally. And it has a pale, luminous grey-green color that reflects sunlight like polished matte silver. There is a lot of soapstone in Brazil, but it's impossible to carve a 30-meter statue from solid blocks of soapstone. It's too heavy for the mountain's structure to support. Then, Hector presents a solution that is both brilliant and a true test of human patience. They are going to make a mosaic. They decide to cut the soapstone into tiny triangular tiles. Not just a few, more than 6 million of them, each tile only 3 or 4 centimeters wide and a few millimeters thick. And they will glue these tiny stone triangles directly onto the concrete structure of the statue. Now, imagine the extremely complex and overwhelming logistics of this operation. It was 1926 when the actual construction on the peak began. Everything in this project, every bag of cement, every steel bar, every wooden plank for the scaffolding, every barrel of drinking water, and each of those stone triangles had to be transported on the Corcovado Railway. This is a steam train, inaugurated by Emperor Dom Pedro II in 1884. It climbs the daunting 30-degree slope of the mountain on a special rack and pinion track. The intense smell of burning coal and hot grease fills the air as the train surges violently through the dense, humid Atlantic forest. Passengers can literally reach out and touch the thick green leaves of the jungle, and the environment itself reacts. The Atlantic forest is not just trees. It is a living, hostile entity. Workers are constantly battling swarms of insects. Mosquitoes bite their necks as they carry heavy steel. Venomous snakes sometimes slither onto the tracks, delaying the train. The train is the only vital connection. If the train breaks down, all the work stops. There is no alternative route. There are no supply trucks. Meanwhile, at the foot of the mountain, in the quiet parish of Our Lady of Glory, the women of the town gather. They sit at long, heavy wooden tables. In front of them, piles of carved soapstone and enormous rolls of sturdy linen fabric. Their job is to glue the small stone triangles onto the fabric, side by side, creating flexible mosaic tiles. It's tedious, exhausting, and extremely repetitive work. Their fingers ache, their backs cramp. It takes years. But these women leave their personal mark on history. Before gluing the stones, many of them take pens and write names on the back of the blank pieces. They write the names of their children. They write the names of husbands they lost to illness. They write the names of secret lovers. They write desperate prayers for the future. Look at that monument today. Hidden beneath the surface, pressed forever against the dark concrete core of the statue, are thousands of secret prayers and names. It is a city that literally envelops its own monument with its own hands. But up there on the mountain? Yes, all that romance dies instantly. It's a real war zone, with noise, dust, and constant danger. There is almost no flat ground to walk on. The workers have to build the base of the statue practically hanging off the edge of the cliff. One wrong step backward, one slip on a wet rock, and it's a 700-meter drop to the treetops below. Up there are no modern concrete mixers. Dry cement and sand are transported by train. Since there is no plumbing, water has to be fetched from a natural spring further down the mountain and carried there in wooden barrels. Workers mix concrete by hand with large iron shovels right on the edge of the cliff. They breathe a fine, suffocating dust all day long. The smell of sweat and wet concrete completely permeates the thin air. The physical strain is immense. The tropical heat is stifling, drying out the raw concrete and heating the steel bars until they literally burn the workers' bare, calloused hands. Then, suddenly, the atmosphere changes. A black storm surges from the ocean. The temperature drops 15 degrees in a matter of minutes. The wind howls through the exposed steel structure, sounding like a screaming beast trapped on the peak. And that's where the lightning starts. Mount Corcovado is a natural lightning rod. It is the highest point in kilometers. Workers learn to interpret the invisible electrical signals in the air. They smell the strong metallic odor of ozone just before an electrical discharge. The fine hairs on their arms and necks stand on end. When this happens, absolute panic sets in. They must drop their metal tools immediately and run down the stairs toward a small reinforced wooden shelter, slippery and rocky. They huddle together in the dark, covering their ears as the thunder rattles the stones beneath their boots. They wait. As soon as the storm passes, they climb back up, grab their tools, and continue building. We are entering the final years of the 1920s. The central concrete core is rising steadily. Massive arms extend horizontally over the void. The scaffolding surrounding it is made of incredibly heavy peroba wood, tied together with thick ropes. It looks like a dense, chaotic forest of wood enveloping a skeletal monster of rough, grey concrete. The man who manages the site daily is the foreman, Heitor Levy is completely obsessed. He practically lives on the peak. He sleeps in a small, cold, drafty wooden cabin tied to the rocks a few meters from the terrifying precipice. He knows the name of every worker. He rigorously inspects each batch of concrete prepared manually. But then something happens. The inevitable almost catches up with them. Levy is inspecting the outer edge of the wooden scaffolding, high up near where his right shoulder will rest. The wood is smooth and wet from a recent heavy rain. He misjudges where he's stepping. He slips. He falls backward from the narrow wooden planks, plummeting towards the abyss. By sheer luck, his leather tool belt gets caught on a sharp piece of exposed steel rebar protruding from the core. He hangs there, suspended over a terrifying, dizzying precipice. Below him, there is nothing but thin air and the tiny rooftops of the city down below, looking like toys. He hangs there, panting, his heart pounding in his chest, until his men hear his desperate cries and violently pull him away by the arms. He is trembling, he is deathly pale, but he absolutely refuses to descend the mountain. He drinks a glass of water, wipes his face, and immediately returns to work. According to accounts from the time, Levy was deeply shaken by the fall and is said to have converted to Catholicism. He wrote his own name and that of his family on a piece of parchment. He sealed it inside a small glass bottle and buried it deep in the damp concrete that forms the heart of the statue's chest, right on the 9th floor. Now begins the final, most complex and dangerous phase. The delicate molds for the head and hands arrive from France, somehow surviving the long and turbulent boat trip across the Atlantic. They don't arrive as solid pieces of stone. They are detailed plaster molds. The actual concrete pouring takes place in Brazil, right at the base of the mountain, in a warehouse built specifically for that purpose. Due to its colossal size, the head was molded from 50 separate pieces of concrete that fit together. The hands are equally monstrous. A single finger is the size of a grown man, weighing several tons. The fingernails alone are wider than a standard dinner plate. They transport these enormous concrete blocks up the mountain one by one on the noisy and overloaded steam train. Now, they need to assemble them in the sky. The wooden structure encasing the head is terrifying just to look at. The workers balance on thin wooden planks suspended directly in the clouds. To get the 50 pieces of the head to the top, the men must carry them into the dark, hollow core of the statue, hoisting them up the narrow, claustrophobic spiral staircase, 12 stories high. There are no seatbelts, there are no helmets, there are no safety nets underneath. Just men in cloth caps and leather boots, manually hoisting sections of a concrete facade using simple iron pulleys and thick hemp ropes. They fit the 50 pieces together like a giant three-dimensional jigsaw puzzle. They pour the last portions of concrete to permanently seal the joints. Carefully, they place the last gleaming soapstone mosaic tiles over the cheeks and the serene closed eyes of the face. It's 1931. The pressure is unbearable. The deadline is approaching. The centenary of independence passed 9 long years ago. The public is growing increasingly impatient. Secular newspapers are asking pointed questions about the endless delays. Donations are becoming dangerously scarce. Every day, the workers race against time, battling the twilight. The wind whips their clothes, but slowly and methodically, piece by piece, the dense wooden structure of the scaffolding begins to be dismantled. For the first time, on the busy and noisy streets of Rio de Janeiro, people can see a face, not a mass of concrete, not a messy construction site. A highly detailed face looking back at them. He is serene. He is completely indifferent to the vertiginous fall, indifferent to everything. It works. Heitor da Silva Costa's insane and gigantic gamble really pays off. The perspective and proportions are absolutely perfect. Viewed from below, the head appears life-size. The arms seem strong, not fragile. The Art Deco lines designed by Landowski give the monument an imposing and striking presence. It seems to have sprung naturally from the rock itself. The city is buzzing with excitement. Rio de Janeiro is completely covered in green and yellow flags. Thousands of people crowd the streets and squares, gazing towards the peak. They prepared a grand event with wide publicity for the evening. The Italian inventor Guglielmo Marconi, the father of radio, is comfortably seated aboard his yacht, the Elettra, off the coast of Italy, thousands of kilometers away on the other side of the ocean. Marconi has been experimenting with long-distance shortwave radio. The plan is pure science fiction for the year 1931. Marconi will press a button on his yacht. The radio signal will travel across the Atlantic Ocean, reach a huge receiving antenna in Rio, and automatically turn on the spotlights, illuminating the giant statue in the darkness for the first time. The moment arrives. Night falls. The weather in Rio is terrible. It's raining torrentially. The crowd holds its breath. The official version is that Marconi presses the button. And absolutely nothing happens. The signal fails, probably due to bad weather interfering with transmission. The relay is never activated. High up on the mountain, in utter panic, a local engineer realizes the stunt has failed, but he refuses to let the night be ruined for the huge crowd watching below. He runs in the rain to the main electrical distribution box, grabs the heavy metal lever, and manually flips the giant switch at the base of the monument. The enormous spotlights come on. The crowd roars frenetically, completely oblivious to the technical glitch backstage. Suddenly, in the darkness of the rainy night, a bright white colossus appears, floating magically above the city. It's an instant and overwhelming triumph. The architectural critics were silenced forever. The engineers who swore the statue would be toppled in the first windstorm proved to be completely wrong. The builders gather their tools. They take the steam train down the mountain one last time. They leave behind an empty structure. Because here's a secret, it's actually a hollow structure. You can enter the arms of Christ, the Redeemer. It's completely hollow. It's a dark, echoing, claustrophobic concrete tunnel that stretches from fingertip to fingertip, filled with the low, haunting hum of the wind outside. And hidden within that dark core, high on the 9th floor, lies another secret. Legend says the builders molded a stylized human heart out of concrete, over a meter wide. They covered it with the same delicate soapstone slabs used on the exterior. It's completely invisible from the city below. It exists only for the maintenance workers who climb the dark stairs, a silent signature left by the men who dedicated 9 years of their lives to the mountain. There is a small, heavy trapdoor right at the top of the crater, through which modern maintenance workers can climb to the crown to take a look around. But on the outside, it looks solid, heavy, timeless. Over the decades, the city below transforms drastically. Dictatorships rise and fall. The nation's capital moves inland to the newly built city of Brasilia in 1960. The favelas spread further and further across the hillsides, fundamentally altering the city's social fabric. But the statue remains. It anchors the landscape, becoming a symbol not only of faith, but of Brazil itself. We look at these immense historical monuments and simply accept them. We think they've always been there. We see their image filtered through postcards, printed on cheap tourist t-shirts, displayed in opening scenes of frenetic action movies, and they completely lose their physical weight. But someone had to put it there. Someone had to stand on a piece of wet wood, hundreds of meters high, with the wind howling in their ears, and carefully glue a tiny fragile stone triangle onto a huge concrete finger. Christ the Redeemer is not just a religious symbol overlooking a beautiful bay. It is a monument to the pure, stubborn, and irrational force of human will. It is a testament to the men who carried 30 tons of raw concrete to the top of a cliff and somehow built a giant without any widely documented fatal accidents during construction. A true engineering miracle of the 1920s. The next time you see a picture of that famous and imposing cityscape, don't just look at the white statue. Observe the jagged and daunting rock beneath it, and imagine the old steam train carving its way to the top, carrying men who simply refused to let the mountain win. What other impossibilities do we let pass by every day without realizing it? If you enjoy stories about the raw, realistic truth behind the pristine history we take for granted, click the like button. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.